Okay, so we're going to pick up where we left off, right? So you should have all finished Geometric Constructions 2. If you look at the video for geometric or for multi-view, page 128, that'll help you complete those views. And then today I'm going to partially complete, or at least complete enough information of page 129 to help you understand better how these different multi-views are going. So the first thing you're going to have to get is some trace paper, or you can get some of the solid white sketch paper. But I use trace paper here just to clarify what I'm tracing and so you can see what I'm doing as well. So you want to go ahead and tape your paper down to the inside of your book. This time we're not doing a border and title block. This time we're just going based on what we can trace out of the book to get the idea. The next exercise of the book we'll actually go through and lay out our border again and title block for the last little bit, and then I'll start giving you templates. So the first thing you want to do is go ahead and draw out the borders they've given you. So that's that big 6 by grid, or 3 by 2 grid, and you're going to go ahead and trace all these out. And you'll see here I start to draw some of the outlines of the objects, and you're going to draw these outlines of these objects too, except you're not going to write the dimensions. You're only going to draw the objects themselves. You could even avoid drawing the 3D shapes, and you'll see why you might need that in a little bit. So I just started drawing the object here before I realized I might want to show some of those borders. And what I'm doing is just tracing the main features of the object, right? The edges, the faces, things that are showing up in projection view, right? Multi-view projection. I'm going to go ahead and add in those divisions. Real simple. Now notice I'm not freehanding any of this, so neither should you. I'm using only straight edges or drafting tools to complete this exercise. It's very important that you do the same. Quick subdivisions. And you may find this paper may be too flimsy to 3-hole punch and put in your binder, but you should be able to store it in one of the pockets on either side of the binder. So moving up to number 7, right, the color face, the red face is what's missing. But before we can draw that, we need to do our projection lines for the outermost edges of the object, or what I like to call the extents of the object. So in other words, I'm going to project a line for the base. You'll see here I tried to use a pencil to help that pop out, but wasn't getting enough contrast. So I'll go ahead and grab my red pen. Now this red pen would symbolize a 2H or 4H for you. So this is a very light line. These lines should not be very strong. It's just like showing your work when doing a math problem. And you'll see later how we come back and pop out the answer. So now I'm projecting lines from all the views, right? And these lines represent edges of the object. Right, so these are each step of the object, along with here the base of the object. Same for the top view. I'm going to do my furthest edge. Right, then I'm going to do my next edge, right, which is the second stair. And then finally the top stair. And now as long as you know what you're drawing, you don't have to project those lines all the way across the page. And there's the back face. So now I've created the border, the outline sort of for what I need, but I need to actually create that profile. So to do that, you're going to come back with a heavier pencil or a pen if you'd like, carefully if you're going to use a pen, and darken in those areas of significance, right? So in other words, that view that's missing, I'm going to go ahead and darken in what it should look like. So I'm going to create the top step. Right, each line of the step. And then the bottom and the side. And so there you have it, right? There's your front view, which is representative of the red face, right? That's colored. And that shows you, and it's all accurate, right? Because we've used our projection lines to define those edges. And you'll see here, the only thing I'm freehanding is that little 3D object because it helps me remember what I'm drawing at times. Alright, now we'll move on to number 8. We're going to do the same thing. Now, even though it's a triangular surface, like you'll see, if you remember we talked about oblique, it still shows up in a flat view. So it's very important that you show all surfaces that would be projected, right? And sometimes even when you have hidden surfaces, we'll project those too, which will happen later today in this exercise. So I'm just go ahead and recreating, tracing over what they've provided me. No dimensions this time, because later on we'll introduce dimensions. I don't want to talk about that now because it may confuse you. We just want to talk about showing the edges and what I call blocking in or boxing in your view, right, for your drawing. So based on the information we have, we'll block in what we see. So I'm just tracing. And now here I'm missing the top view, which is a little different. And that's going to require us to do one additional step that we haven't done quite so far yet. And you'll see why here in a minute. You may have done it on the previous exercises. You copied some of my projection lines, but I'd like to walk you through it a little more here. So when you're looking at an object like that from the sides, right, we have our height, we have our width, right, which is representative, and then we have our depth, right? Our side view shows depth and height. Top view shows depth and width. Front view shows width and height. So I'm going to do my projection lines for the edges and even the intersections. So just because there's no edge there, or wall, you still want to show that line projected vertically. And finally, the back face. Now, they've already given us a little bit of a hint as to what the back of the object looks like, so I'm going to go ahead and just create a top face, right? It doesn't really matter where this is because you'll get some more information later. So we're going to trace that top face. I'm just going to carry that line all the way across the page. And now I'm creating this kind of nice little blocked in view. Now I'm going to go ahead and pick up my line where they've shown it's stopping, right? That's the thickness, the depth of the object right there. That dimension should match this dimension, and you'll see why in a second, right? The thickness up there should be the same as the thickness on the side view. So now here's the next part. When we project the inside edge, right, of this side view, you don't want to go all the way to the end of your view. You want to carry that up just as far at a right angle until it intersects the top view, right? So creating that point there. You're going to do the same thing for the back face. Project the back face up. You're going to make a point, and then you'll connect those points. Now, here's the key. That line I just drew is called the folding plane. That's essentially where your projection lines flip from side to top view, because side and top view can share information. In fact, they usually do. So the next thing you do is project up any lines from the side view to hit that folding plane. And then you're going to project over from the folding plane additional lines. Now that little thing I just projected was only representative of that little bump out on the triangle, so it doesn't have to go the whole way. And now I'm completing my projection lines just to make sure everything's there, and I'll darken in what the top view should look like. Now if you look at the top of the object, it's still rectangular, but it just has a bump out and a flat or triangular inclined surface. So when you're looking at it in top view, it's still a rectangle. It's just slightly oblique. And we'll get to those later on how to draw oblique views, but for now we just want to focus on how to understand flat views. And so we've completed our top view. Now we'll move on to number 9, and I'll draw this one with you, and then the rest you'll be able to continue on your own based on the previous tutorial as well as this one. Once again, I'll start numbering out. Number 9, make sure I label it. Create my bounding edges, in other words, the outside edges of the object. I'll start adding in some of those features that I'm tracing in. Now I'm not just tracing these lines indiscriminately. I'm actually checking and just saying, okay, well, if I'm tracing this line, what does that represent on the side of the view? Alright, so in other words, I'm just tracing those things in the side and the top view, and now I need to complete the front view on this one. So I'm going to make my light projection lines, which represent the outer edges of my object, right? The top, there's your height. And now we're going to do the width. And then that gives us a little zone, right? This little blocked out area that we know our face, which is colored red, will fit within. So the first line we project is that edge. Right? We know that's an edge that just goes off, but it doesn't go all the way to the back of the object. It's just right there. So then we vertically project that same edge, right? Because the top and side share this element. And that's where they meet. We'll do the same thing for the top little stair, or that little flat ledge, which is there. And then we'll make our top edge. So now we've made that surface and those lines. So you're just going to take your 2H, your 2B rather, now that you've created all your projection lines, and we're going to darken in and show the boundary of that face. And all I'm doing here is tracing and continuing on. Now I'm not just tracing indiscriminately, I'm looking and seeing what lines I projected and what do they mean, what do they represent. So that point to that point, right, the flat edge from that point to that point, these are based on intersections, and then another diagonal from there to there. And so now we've created 7, 8, and 9 using our projection lines, and you'll be able to do the same, continuing doing 10, 11, and 12. Now be mindful that when you see these dotted lines, those dotted lines mean hidden. So in other words, you're still projecting lines, you're just dashing them because they cannot be seen in the view shown. So if you have to show something and it's not shown on your view, you want to dash it in lightly.